Hey guys, Squatch Reloading here. Today we are going to be continuing on the 223 series on the Dillon XL750. And if you take a look at this press behind me, you can see that it is fully set up for 223. So we're going to need to do a little bit of backtracking today because what we're going to start off with is sizing and trimming on the XL750. And we're going to get that accomplished with the Dillon RT1500 trim motor and a Dillon Sizing and trim die. So let's go ahead and get this tool head off here. Let's get set up to do some sizing and trimming. All right, we're just going to go ahead and remove this tool head. And what we're going to be using today is a Dillon shortened trim head. This one, or tool head, this one is specifically made for trimming, and it's especially necessary if you're doing 300 blackout on the XL750 with an RT1500 or a Honey Badger setup. You will find that you will not have enough thread engagement to do 300 blackout properly. And in fact, in most cases with 223 and a sizing die, trim die, you'll end up putting the lock ring on the bottom of the tool head anyways. So having the short trim head just makes life a lot easier when doing 223 and 300 blackout on your XL750. As you can see, I already have a universal decapping die set up in this tool head. This is the auto centering decapper from FW Arms. This is not the spring-loaded pin like some of their newer versions, but we're going to leave that in here just in case we need to knock out any primers. All the brass that we're using today has already been deprimed and cleaned, and I've already swaged all those primer pockets, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So let's go ahead and get this installed and get our keeper pins back in the press. Again, our number 3 shell plate's already installed, all of our pins. We're fully ready to go. The only thing that we need to do is decide how we want to turn off this priming system, so let's jump around and address that now. Alright, so to remove or to turn off the priming system on the XL750, you've got several different options, and I'm going to show you 3 of those now. The first thing that we can do is physically remove these 2 thumb nuts down here, remove the primer magazine, and pull everything out and just have this spot empty. Another easy way to do it is to go ahead, cycle the press forward, take one of your 223 cases, slide it in just like that, so it keeps the primer slide from engaging, and then go ahead and remove your op rod at that time. So now you can operate the press without the primer system going. Typically what I'll do though is I'll go ahead and remove the spring on the bottom and just leave the primer slid back to its rearmost position. So you've got different ways you can do that. You don't need any special widget or 3D printed stuff from Amazon, Wish, whatever. You can take care of that pretty easily. And in fact, just removing it 2 thumb screws and it's out of the way completely is another option that I do sometimes as well. So let's go ahead and grab that sizing die and let's start getting it set up. Okay guys, so we're going to be using a Dillon, and this is a steel sizing and trim die. And I get asked a lot, well, why don't you use carbide sizing die, when you're trimming? Well, I mean, I don't know what they are now, but typically they were like 180 bucks, and you can pick these up for like 80. And this particular die, I'm sure has 30,000-ish sizes on it, and it's not worn out. The key is just use lubrication like you're supposed to, guys. And last I checked, steel is still harder than brass, so I don't think you're going to wear this out. But that's just my opinion. I know I'll probably get some hate mail for that, but I don't see the point in spending the money on the carbide when this is going to work just fine. But let's go ahead and get this installed. So again, this is our sizing and trim die, standard Dillon lock ring, and we're going to start just a couple threads in the tool head, and then we're going to set that up, and I'm going to use just a pretty much basic Lyman case gauge here. We're not going to be measuring headspace and all that stuff. We just want to make sure that we get a SAMI spec'd headspace, so we're going to do that with the Lyman case gauge. So let's go ahead and get this set up, And let's get some cases lubed. And I got a few cases right here. I'm going to use a this is an alcohol lanolin blend. It's a little bit more concentrated with lanolin just because I'm going to be doing some trimming with it. So that's what I'm going to use for some lubrication here. So let's go ahead and get some cases lubed, and then we're going to start setting up this sizing die. We need to set up the sizing die first, and then we'll establish our trim length with the trimmer motor installed on top of this die. So let's go ahead and get after it. Alright, setting this die up is pretty much just like any of your other normal sizing dies. And again, using this shortened trim head with the 223 is really nice because I have enough room on top here to still get my lock ring with full thread engagement. So basically I'm running this down until I feel it bottom out on the shell plate, and then I'm just going to back it out just a little bit. And now I'm going to go ahead and just run this lock ring down just to kind of hold it in place. I'm going to go ahead and put a case into station 4 here. And then we're just going to run it up into the sizing die and then check it with our case gauge. And looks like we're still a little bit from flush, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten that down just a little bit. What I want to do is I just want to take it down far enough to everything sitting flush, and that is it. If you guys can see that, still just needs a little bit more. What I have found is you can overdo this, and sometimes you can end up buckling the shoulder a little bit. So I'm just trying to just catch the edge there so that my sizing is good. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'm going to grab a straight edge and just double check it. Alright, I'm just going to take the back of my multi-tool here and just make sure that I'm not catching that case anywhere. I caught a little bit, so we're going to make a little bit of an adjustment again, just a little bit. Like I said, I just want that to fit flush with the case gauge, and that's it. That looks a lot better. Yep, that's perfect. Alright, I'm going to call that good. So I'm going to go ahead and grab another case. We're going to run it up into the die and button it up. Grab my die lock wrench. That is good. And we'll double check again with our case gauge on the new case. Looks nice and flush. And with my straight edge, I'm not catching. So we're going to call that good. So now what we need to do is determine what trim length we're going to go with and get that trim motor installed onto the press. So when you guys buy an RT1500, it's going to come with a specific lock ring for the motor itself, and the top of this thread, or I'm sorry, the top of this die is not your standard die thread, so you need the specific lock nut that comes with it. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and get that threaded on there, and I'm going to run a case up into the die, and I want to show you guys what this actually looks like inside. If I can get you zoomed in here, hopefully you can see what we got going on. So if we look inside the die, you're going to see the neck of the case come up through the die. So there's not a lot of room there. So what we want to do is make sure that when we install our trim motor, that we never bottom out the cutter on the bottom of the die. And typically the way these dies are set up and designed, I've never had to trim that much. And in fact, if you've got to trim away where you're hitting the bottom of the die, you've got other problems. But I'm going to go ahead and grab the trim motor here. And these trim motors are pretty heavy, and on the inside of them, this is just a standard, I think it's like a carbide cutting tool that's in there. It's three-sided, so you can rotate it 3 times. I have never rotated this tool, I don't believe, and I've got, like I said, plenty rounds through it, and it cuts just fine. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to get this threaded down. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more here, and hopefully you can see this. Get some light on the situation a little bit. I'm going to thread this down until it just engages the top of the case. So you can see it's bottoming out on top of the case, and then I got a little bit of slop there. So all I'm going to do is turn that in until I take up the slop on the case, just like that. I'm going to call that good for a second. Then we're going to get this wired up, and then we're going to start making adjustments by turning this drill motor up, or I'm sorry, this trimmer motor up and down until we get the desired length that we're looking for. All right, with your RT1500, you're going to get a power supply here. It's got an on-off switch. It's illuminated. It makes it nice to know if the actual drill, or I don't know why I keep calling it drill motor. The trimmer motor is still on, and it basically has a specific connector that goes right on the top of the motor there. So we're going to go ahead and get this put on, and then we're going to button up this lock nut, start it up, and then we're going to start adjusting it up and down until we get the desired trim length that we're looking for. All right, so we have the RT1500 mounted up. I've got the lock ring snugged up, and we don't have the dust cover or the vac adapter on right now because we were going to be making some adjustments, and we'll have to loosen this lock nut to make those adjustments. So having it on now is kind of pointless. But what we're going to do is we're going to throw a case up in here and throw some chips. So it's important that we're wearing our safety glasses here. And the books usually call out a trim length of 1.750. I like to shoot for 1.740. That's just my preference. But you guys, you know, this is all basically how you develop your loads. I develop mine at 1.740. So let's go ahead and turn on the RT1500. And again, safety glasses, and we're going to throw some chips here. So I'm going to go ahead and set it there in station 4. And we're going to run it up into the machine, and we should have some chips flying here. All right. So we have removed material. Hopefully you guys can see how nice that trim quality is there. And as we get into this series, I typically don't even chamfer and deburr these. I just run them like this because they're so clean. Anyways, our first measurement is 1.751. Per the book, we could stop there. I'm going to go ahead and adjust it down to thousandths. I will go ahead do that now. I'm going to turn off the trim motor, and we're just going to loosen this lock nut and then dial this down clockwise until I get the length I want, and then I'll bring you guys right back. All right, so I have the length that I want established. So now we're going to take this is a vacuum adapter, and that's why this trim head is so nice, is I'm going to go ahead and slide that around like so. And there's two 5/32 fasteners that is going to attach just like this. So we're going to go ahead and run that into the threaded holes on the back side there. Get this buttoned up. And this will actually allow us to hook up a vacuum. I believe it's a 1-inch OD opening, which is kind of a pain. I had to make an adapter for my vacuum hose here, but you guys will figure that out once you get into this and get one. But once we get it snugged up, we'll go ahead and get our vacuum hooked up. We'll turn on the motor, and we're going to start doing some sizing and trimming. We'll do some quality checks, and that's just one step further we are in this series. All right, you guys can see I've got my vacuum hooked up here. I've got a case feeder full of lubed cases. So now we're just going to go ahead and start running these through. Again, just to kind of recap, in our first station, I got that auto centering universal decapper. So we're going to be popping out any primers there. Station 2 is empty, of course. Station 3 is going to be empty. And now that we get into station 4, this is where we're going to start sizing and trimming. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the RT1500 now. And it's going to get a little loud because we're going to be turning on the vacuum that's going to suck away the chips. So bear with us here. Just plugging it in. All right, so now let's just start trimming. All right, guys, so we've got all these sized and trimmed. They fit our case gauge very nicely. They're all to the length that I like. And just for your reference, as far as variation on this, it's very minimal. Probably half a thousandths variation from case to case is what I've seen on this setup. Now, we need to make a couple decisions right here. Are you going to chamfer to burr the ends? Another option, especially if you're trimming them with this, it leaves such a nice edge. Throw these back in your tumbler with stainless steel pins. It'll knock any burrs off that you might run into. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a CH4D ID mandrel die, and it's going to be on our tool head when we get to it. We're actually putting powder in and bullets and so on. It's going to knock that edge off on the inside and take care of any burr that might be on there. And then our taper crimp is going to knock off any burr that's going to be on the outside edge. Or go ahead and hit those with an ID/OD mandrel and knock the burrs off that way. If you're going to be using a cutting tool to do your primer pockets anyways, it's a good time to use that VLD ID tool. Hit the primer pocket, hit the inside edge of the neck on the case here. So that's where we're going to go next. We're probably going to use, and we are going to use, the ID mandrel, just like I explained earlier. Now, I wanted to cover one thing, and I get asked this a lot because guys have seen me run this setup before, is, hey, they make a tool aftermarket that'll do your swaging on the press. And I have used one, and they work. They're a little tedious, and you got to get a real good feel for it. I'm not going to advocate for it either direction, but what I am going to tell you is that Dillon specifically says that installation of that tool on their press voids the warranty, and something sitting here with a lifetime warranty, I don't want to void that whatsoever. So take that with a grain of salt. Whatever you guys decide to do on those primer pockets, do so now. But we are ready to go ahead. I got several to finish up here, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. And then in the next video, we're going to start setting up the 223 tool head. We're going to be using the CH4D ID mandrel, which is similar to like a Lyman M die. Our powder measure, of course, our seating die. We're going to be using Dillon steel 223 dies. The seating die and the crimp, taper crimp, we're going to get that set up. And we'll be running 55 grain FMJ boat tails in this series as well. So a lot of fun. Can't wait to finish this one out. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to hit me up, squatchreloading@gmail.com. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram, always at squatchreloading. And if you like these videos, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything that we got coming up. But until next time, guys, God bless.